For those who maybe are new to the P-51 story, what happened was the British Purchasing Committee came to the United States, actually met with North American Aircraft. They asked North American, would you build the P-40? And North American didn't really want to do that. And they had a prototype that they had kind of sketched up and drawn up a little bit. And they presented that to them and said, we'd really like to try to build this prototype. It was a really great performing airplane. The British wanted it. They ordered 75 immediately. And the United States Army Air Force at that point got involved and said, you know, really, we should have 2 of these aircraft for evaluation. The aircraft really wasn't available to go out of the country until they had 2 to evaluate. So the 4th and 10th aircraft just randomly were pulled from the production line. This is number 4 that you're standing in front of here today. And right next to it is one of the last produced D model Mustangs, Paul 1. These are 2 aircraft that are in our collection, have been in our collection for a few decades now. This airplane served most of its life between Langley and Wright Field, and then eventually ended up in the National Collection with the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. The aircraft was in storage, and Paul had actually gotten tipped off that it was there. He went to go check it out, indeed found the airplane was there, so Paul arranged for a trade. The aircraft then went through a total restoration, and then was flown here. And actually, Paul did fly it for a few years until I think he felt that, you know, it's a prototype, maybe it needs to be preserved in the Eagle hangar here at the museum, where we can study it years from now. So in honor of the anniversary of the first flight of the prototype Mustang, we're going to give you a little behind the scenes tour and actually let you poke your head inside the XP-51, something we really don't do a lot, but again, on this anniversary, when we give you guys a chance to actually do that. So stand by here, we're going to go ahead and open it up. It's a lot different than any other of the surviving Mustangs. When you're in the cockpit of this aircraft, the floor of the cockpit of the XP-51 is actually the top of the wing, as opposed to when you're in the D model, where you have an actual floor built into that aircraft. So one of the things as we walk around to the nose you'll see is a lot different, of course, is the scoop is on the top of the aircraft, as opposed to when you look at something like the D model, has a scoop on the bottom. I think the other noticeable thing is there's machine guns up here that are timed to fire through propeller. That really only was on a few variants of the Mustang. One thing you'll also notice walking around the aircraft is a scoop under the belly. That is a lot different on this aircraft. When you look at this airplane and then we go look at the one under the D model, completely redesigned. Looking at the outside of the aircraft, probably the most identifiable difference is the canopies. The D model Mustang, later produced, had the bubble top. Earlier stuff, I've heard it called a lot of different things, razorback or highback or whatever you want to call it, but it had a lot of the framework that you would see, such as this on the XP-51. Internally, of course, a lot different. The XP-51 and the early aircraft that North American produced in this line, they all had Allison engines. And later production aircraft had the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, of course, later produced by Packard. So you might ask why the engine changed from the Allison to the Merlin, and it was just because of a high altitude performance. The Allison was a great engine. Aircraft was already a great performer down low, but to give it that sort of horsepower that it needed to get up high and stay with the bombers, they needed to change up. They needed to get a different supercharger in the aircraft. And of course, that was a 2-stage supercharger that they went with. And with combining that with the Rolls-Royce Merlin, I mean, it was a match made in heaven. When you look at, you know, a lot of the other jobs it was doing, such as close air support and things like that, which Mustangs did do, bomber escort was something that it was unmatched at. This airplane had the range to go all the way to Germany and back. You know, in talking with my friend Connor, the thing that he really said that I like was that the British built the Spitfire to save Europe, and America built the Mustang to save the world. The Mustang not only soldiered on, but went to Korea, deployed to Korea, and actually held its own in Korea for a good while. And then, of course, it became a collector's item. They became sought after, they were air racers. You know, the Mustang obviously is famous for being the fighter that it is. But it was more than that, because it helped break the glass ceiling. When you had the Wasp, that were women who were delivering them from the factory and flying these aircraft, you know, to the different military bases, they were flying P-51s. And then it also helped break in the race barrier. You know, it was the Tuskegee Airmen that took these airplanes, you know, to fight the Germans based out of Italy in the 15th Air Force. It became a staple in society. So much so that years later, when they went to design the sports car, that is where it got the name. The designer of the Ford Mustang pulled the name out of the iconic P-51.